Yeah, he walked away from his life. No shirt, just swimming trunks. It's not going to be Michael. Give it up. You know my child was murdered. Don't play with me. I'm a mother that's trying to tell you something's happened to my child.
Warning. The podcast you're about to listen to may contain graphic descriptions of violent assaults, murder, and adult language. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Murder Police Podcast. Missing. Michael Keith Gorley. Well, David, you had gone and conducted an interview regarding the missing case of then 38-year-old Michael Keith Gorley, and unfortunately, I was unable to attend with that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that interview?
Well, I wish you had been there, but at some point you'll get to meet his mother and the rest of the family. There's some events coming up where you'll get to meet them, and they're excited about meeting you. I went and met with Michael's mother. Her name is Sandra Hasty. And I had met her just about 2 years ago at a vigil that she hosts in Junction City, Kentucky. Ever since Michael went missing in 2015, she has really applied a lot of her efforts into, first of all, of course, trying to solve Michael's case, but she's a huge victim advocate, and she actually has several Facebook pages of different things that carry information about people that are missing to try to keep their names alive. But at that interview, we conducted that at the Boyle County Library here in Kentucky. They were nice enough to give us a room to work with. And I met with his mother, Sandra, his sister, Jennifer Gorley Coffey, really wonderful woman, and also a private investigator named Mike Ward, who's a very interesting man and a former police officer from Connecticut.
Interesting. So you met them at the Boyle County, which is the Danville Library. So why don't you start with telling us, where was Michael from originally?
Michael, where he was missing from and where he is in the area where his mother lived, he was living with her at the time, was from Stanford, Kentucky. And
so just outside Danville.
Exactly right. It's just a drive down the road from where we live, actually, here at the farm. He went missing from a Highway 300, also known as Knoblick Road in Stanford, Kentucky. And the thing that the listeners are going to hear is a lot of information about what looks like it's solvable, but there's a lot of difficulty with it.
Such as what? Difficulty? If it has solvability, what makes that a difficult, solvable case?
Well, as we'll hear, silence is that uniquely enough, if you're an investigator that gets one of these cases like this, you have a solid known last location. That's a big deal with it. And the reason we know it's known is we had witnesses that were with him. So you have a location. You have people that he is with when he disappears, but all of a sudden the people that he's with don't seem to be able to keep their story straight. And that's what makes it suspicious.
Absolutely. Anytime you have varying stories and circumstances that vary from what happened, where it happened, coupled with silence, I'm sure that does make for a very tough case to solve and locate even Michael. Well, why don't you tell me and tell the listeners, did you and the family talk about Michael when he was little, when he was growing up, a little about him?
We did. A lot of information, everything from when he was born all the way through going through school.
Michael was born at Casey County Memorial in Casey County, Kentucky on December 22nd, 1976 on my grandmother's birthday. 6 pounds, 7 ounces and 18.5 inches long. He was a good baby, a beautiful baby. He slept the night I brought him home from the hospital. He slept the whole night. And I was at my mom's, and she ran in the room as I was getting out of bed because we sure thought something was wrong with him, and he just woke up and smiled at us. I went in labor. My mom and dad were Christmas shopping, and me and my sister Diane and my niece Angel were at home. Well, I was washing dishes, and I was scraping out a pan outside to wash it. And all of a sudden, I felt a pain. I said, "Ooh, Diane, I feel a pain." She said, "Oh, sit down, honey." So they kept coming. And she's like, "Mom and Daddy don't have that much money to go Christmas shopping. They better get home." And it was wintertime. And they were in my grandfather's truck. So I'll never forget when I knew I was going, Diane run out with one arm in her jacket. "Don't shut off that truck. Don't shut off that truck." Anyway, my dad came in with Diane, and Mama took me to Casey County. We lived in Lincoln County. And those roads were rough. And she was slinging me all around. I'm like, "Mama, I'm going to have that baby in this truck. Don't you have that baby in this truck?" And I'm in the labor room, and my sister-in-law come in out of the cold and touched my hand and said, "Does it hurt, honey?" And I went right into labor. I went right to delivery. It was 11:22 p.m.
Well, tell me more about Michael as he grew up after that.
He went to Winfield Elementary in West Palm Beach, Florida. Then they went to, what was that? Eagle Lake Elementary.
I only remember from Kentucky.
Now, you said West Palm Beach, Florida. How did we get from Casey County to West Palm Beach?
Oh, my mom moved there, and when me and Michael and Jennifer's daddy divorced, I went there to be with my mom, with Michael and Jennifer.
Okay, gotcha. And how long were you all in West Palm Beach?
I was there for 22 years. Michael and Jenny came back, and they stayed with their dad for 12 years.
And the name of the school was Winfield?
Winfield Elementary, West Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay, and after that, where did you migrate to?
They went to school in Winter Haven, Florida. It was called Eagle Lake Elementary. And then they went to middle school and part of elementary school, middle school, and high school with their dad.
And where was that at?
Well, we went to Junction City Elementary. That was in 1988, I believe. I think it was 88 that we started at Junction. I was in the 5th grade. Well, okay, Michael, he's 18 months older than me, but he got held back in kindergarten. So when I started kindergarten, we were in the same grade. So we went to school together every year until we graduated. We graduated together. But it was 5th grade that we went to Junction City Elementary. And then the middle school we went to was Boyle County Middle School. And then we went to Boyle County High School, and we both graduated from Boyle County High School in 1996.
Gotcha. Now, as he got older, did he work any jobs or anything through middle and somewhere? What kind of places did he work at?
Michael, he did welding out in Texoma, which is Oklahoma, Texas line. He did MIG welding. He welded the trailers for semis. He would weld them together. He done tree service. He did flooring. He was excellent at anything he did.
Yeah, where did he learn how to weld?
In high school. He went to, they had a program where, like at Boyle County, they went somewhere, I think in Lincoln County, one of the area schools, like it was either Lincoln or Garrett, I don't remember which one because I didn't do it. They had a program where you could go over there and work on cars and learn how to weld and just different things like that. So he learned a lot of that stuff there. And then also our dad knew how to do pretty much anything with the car. He had an auto body shop. He built motors, fixed cars, repaired cars, and then he went on to have a construction business. So we kind of worked around bulldozers and pans and scrapers and low boys and hard stuff. What was it like growing up with Michael? What were the things that he really liked doing?
Oh, Lord, Michael Keith was a Momo, which was a motorcycle. But when he was a kid, it was a Momo. So he had his first battery-operated motorcycle. Then it was four-wheeler. And then he just always had an infatuation with at night, I could hear him going, vroom, 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 like he was a motorcycle. And he just had an infatuation with motorcycles. Then he got into cars. But now him and his friend, Jason had a crotch truck. And Michael loved driving that thing. And then I think he got a motorcycle at Jeeps, right? At his dad. His dad's Jeffrey Keith Gorley. And he died. He passed away in 2014.
2004.
2004, I'm sorry, yeah.
And his name again was?
Jeffrey Keith Gorley. He's also known as Jeep. Everybody knew him as Jeep.
Did he have any sort of hobbies or typical young country boy, or what kind of young man was he?
Michael played football. Football was the sport that he loved. So he played that in middle school and high school. All through his years that he could play, he did play.
What kind of personality do you have, especially as a brother? Let's start with that, because that's always
a jokester.
Okay, yeah, that's.
Well, Michael was always a cut up. He just liked to make jokes, mostly about me. He liked to get me going, and then once he got me going, then he'd just sit back and laugh.
There we go.
I'd be ticked off and he'd be laughing about it. But he was just funny. He liked to joke. He liked to cut up. He liked to more or less be like a prankster. He liked hanging out with his friends. He loved football, four-wheelers, motorcycles. He liked tearing stuff down like motors and engines and building them back up. He loved stuff like that. He loved music. Rap music was his favorite. Country music. He liked country.
He liked country, and he liked people. He liked Leonard Skinner and the Eagles and all that. That was our traveling music. Me and Michael traveled a lot. We went to Oklahoma, Texas, Montana, Louisiana,
Florida,
South Dakota. He worked in South Dakota on the oil rigs. So he's worked on smokestacks.
So were y'all just vacationing together, or did you move around when he got different jobs and stuff like that?
No, we just decided, well, let's go somewhere. We went out to my sister's in Montana. She was disabled. She's passed away now. I took care of her the last 2 years of her life. We went out there because he wanted to go see Aunt Diane. We went to Oklahoma because he wanted to go see Aunt Donna. So we stayed out in Montana for about 4 months. Till we couldn't take that weather anymore. It was rough out there. Oklahoma, we stayed a little bit longer there because he enjoyed his job at Texoma Truck and Body. But then his cousin Stephen died, and Jennifer called me at work. I was working for DirecTV, and he was working at Texoma Truck and Body, and told us that Stephen passed away, which Michael and Stephen were like brothers growing up. And I brought him back to Kentucky to go to Stephen's. We went to Stephen's funeral. Michael stayed, and I went back to Oklahoma.
But Michael is a homebody. Kentucky's his home. So no matter where he went, Kentucky is where he always wanted to be. He never was one that he wanted to be by himself. He always wanted to be around family. So my dad and his girlfriend at the time took him to Texas, got him set up. Took a car down there for him, got him set up in his dorm with all these other guys and everything. Well, when they come back from Texas, they wanted to do sightseeing. So they made a few detours, stopped here, there, and whatnot before they made it back to Kentucky. It's a couple days later. I was working at BP in Junction at the time. It was like a day and a half later, here come Michael walking through the door. And I'm like, I thought you were supposed to be in Texas at college. He said, I didn't like it. I'm like, but Dad's not even back from Texas yet. So, he beat Dad back to Kentucky from... He said he did not like
His
it.
car, what did they call it? 14K?
We called it 14K. It was this big, long car. I mean, I say Dad gave him a car. It was a big, long car, and it drank a lot of oil. So he had to put a lot of oil in that car to get it from Texas to Kentucky. But he beat Dad back to Kentucky. He didn't want to be there. And I'm like, that's an awful long way to go just to turn around and come right back, but he did. He just didn't like it.
What did you learn about how he went missing?
That's probably the most interesting, and when you hear his sister Jennifer talk about this in a minute, it may send chills down your spine. Where was Michael living when he went missing?
With me in Lincoln County.
Okay, so at the time when Michael goes missing, you're living in Lincoln County. As far as you can remember that, what date was the first time that you all suspected that he was missing?
The 18th. of May 2015. I called the people. He said, I'll see you later.
And what time of the day was that? Was he leaving?
9 o'clock. Well, anyway, when he didn't come home, I started calling around. No, we haven't seen him. No, we haven't seen him. And then one of them told me, yes, he's at. They knocked on my door. This one and another one knocked on my door, and I don't allow them in my house. And I said, what do you want? It's Michael. We need to talk to you about Michael. All I could think is something happened to him. So they say that Michael drove his truck in the pond and that he wanted it out. That was the only vehicle we had. I had a ride out there with them, and I got a hold of Jenny, sent her pictures of the truck in the pond.
That was on the 17th.
That was on what?
The 17th.
The 17th, right. The 17th. All right. So we go out there. It's only the front end in the pond, the front tires in the pond. It's not sunk in the pond. But it was hard getting out. But we got it out. And I drove it up out of there. Well, I called the guy's house. They said that they dropped Michael off at 11 o'clock that night. He said Michael was there. So, okay, well, he didn't come home the next day. You know, I had an uneasy feeling, and Jennifer was at work. And you can tell him what happened at work.
Well, okay, so let me back up here.
Yeah, I was going to say, take it through.
Let me back up here.
Yeah, how you came
So
about it.
Michael was actually in jail for a couple of months, and he got out on May the 12th. And he was out for about 5 days when he went missing. So anyway, on the 17th, that's when a couple females come to Mom's and told her that Michael had drove his truck in a pond at this house, which most people are familiar with, but I won't mention the address or nothing. So I said, well, when my husband gets off work, we'll come out and see if his Jeep could pull the truck out of the pond, so we didn't have to pay like a tow truck or anything like that to do it. So we went out there, and his Jeep couldn't pull it out. It was too stuck. So he called one of his buddies. His buddy came out with his big Dodge truck, and he was able to pull it out. Then after we left there, we took the truck, I think, to my house, because we didn't really know at that point if it was safe to drive or not. We didn't know what kind of damage was done to the truck or whatnot. So we took it to my house, and we took Mom home, came back. Next morning, I got up, went to work, like a normal day. Mom was at home. Michael never came home that night, though. While I was at work that day, and I know this sounds far-fetched, but I had like a voice that just come to me and said, find Michael. And I'm typing at my computer, and I'm like, find Michael. Okay. So I just, all right, go back to typing on my computer. It says, find Michael. I was like, okay. Oh, now I need to find Michael. So I was like, sitting here thinking I'm at work. I can't just go find Michael. So I went back to working again. Then it said again, find Michael. So I'm just like, okay, I'll find Michael, but I can't do that till I get off work, So I just called Mom, and I was like, did Michael come home? She said, no. I was like, well, where's he at? She said, well, I guess he's at this person's house that they said they left him at. I said, well, we need to find him. Where's this person live? And she didn't know where he lived. She knew who this person was, but she didn't know where that house was. So she started calling around, trying to find out where the house was, trying to get a hold of Michael, whatnot. Couldn't get a hold of him. And I said, well, when I get off work, I'll call my grandma and see if she's talked to him. I'll call my uncle, but just people that I knew that Michael may have talked to or been in contact with to see if they had talked to him. So when I got off work, none of them had talked to him. I got back a hold of Mom, and Mom said, well, they're giving us conflicting information. They're saying different times of when he was there, when he left, whatnot. She's like, something's not right. I was like, okay, well, I'll come pick you up, and we'll just go looking for him, see if we can find him. Went and picked Mom up, which, granted, when she lived out in McKinney, it's a pretty good little ways out through there. And I also had to pick the kids up because they had got off the bus at my husband's aunt's house. So I had to go pick them up, then go pick Mom up. When I went to go pick her up, the strangest thing was there was a state trooper car sitting right beside her road that I had to turn on to get to her house. And I'd never seen a state trooper in that area before. So I was like, this is kind of odd, you know. So I went up, I got Mom, we come back down, the state trooper was still there. And I told Mom, I was like, I feel like we need to just like stop and talk to this trooper and just kind of tell him like, hey, you know, this is a situation going on. Michael didn't come home. Try to get a hold of the people he's supposed to be with. They're giving conflicting information about everything. And we think something might be wrong. So we give all that information to that trooper. And then Mom got a hold of the two people that said they had dropped Michael off at this particular house. And they wanted to meet up with us. They wanted to know what we were going to be doing. We're like, well, we're going to try to go find Michael, but we need to know where you took him to. Like, take us to the house where you took him so we can see if he's still there. So we met up with them at a gas station, and they showed us where this house was. And then once we got there, it really got weird from that point.
When we get there, first they said, I called him on the 17th. He said that Michael was there at 11 p.m. Well, when I tried to call him the next day to say, well, Michael didn't come home, where's he at? He wouldn't answer. He wouldn't answer. So finally I messaged, where's Michael? He messaged back, don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? When did he leave? Between 8:30 and 9 last night. And I said, where'd he go? He left walking, I think. So when we get that, I said, walking where? He said, towards Junction City. So, of course, when we get there, I get out. They're trying to block her from going towards the shed or the backyard of the place where Michael last was. And I'm walking up down the road because Michael's hat and shoes were on the porch of the man's. And I'm walking up down the road because, you know, if he left walking between 8:30 and 9, you know, you could have seen any kind of toe prints or anything in the grass. Nothing at all. So anyway, they kept blocking Jennifer from going towards the shed or the backyard. So then it just got stupid from there, and I called them and called the state police and told them that I had Michael's hat and shoes. They said, well, who are you talking about? I said, my son, Michael Gorley. I put a missing person report out on him. Well, we don't have anything in the computer. I said, well, that was about 5 o'clock. I said, my son's missing. So they sent another trooper out about 2 o'clock in the morning on the 19th. Told him I had Michael's hat and shoes. Did he want to take them in for evidence? Did he want to take the truck in for evidence? Because by that time it was in my yard. No, nothing makes any sense to me.
I'm not really sure what happened with that. And he probably thought we were crazy. I mean, to be honest, he probably thought, okay, this grown man didn't come home after one night and you want me to file a missing person? You know, like, we didn't have any valuable information other than we just suspected that something was wrong. You know, you just got that feeling. Something's not right, something's wrong. You just don't know what. And you're searching. You know, I don't know if you've ever had, like somebody pass away in your family and you just have this overwhelming feeling of there's just something wrong, something's not right.
Like your intuition speaks to you.
Exactly. And
Gut instinct.
You don't know what until somebody calls you and says, oh, by the way, you know, such and such passed away, or this, you know, you just don't know. You just know that you have this feeling that something's just horribly wrong. It was that feeling is what I had. And I'm sure Mom probably did too. But all we really knew is that he didn't come home and that where he was at, the people were not giving us any indication of where he was, why he would have left there, you know, where we could find him, how to get in contact with him, nothing like that.
And from what you're telling me, not only that, but would you use words like evasive? Were they just not? Were they hinky when you were? Is that what I'm getting when you're talking to them? The big thing
was when we pulled the truck out of the pond and Mom called to tell this person where Michael was supposedly at. to let him know that the truck had been pulled out of the pond. It was like 11 o'clock that night. And he said that Michael was there and that he was kind of acting up, and he was getting on his nerves, and he was going to, what did he say? He was going to beat his ass or something like that.
Hey, you know there's more to the story, so go download the next episode like the true crime fan that you are.
The Murder Police podcast is hosted by Wendy and David Lyons and was created to honor the lives of crime victims so their names are never forgotten. It is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lyons. The Murder Police podcast can be found on your favorite Apple or Android podcast platform, as well as at murderpolicepodcast.com, where you will find show notes, transcripts, information about the presenters, and much, much more. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, which is closed captions for those that are hearing impaired. Just search for the Murder Police Podcast and you will find us. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for more and give us 5 stars and a written review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcast from. Make sure to subscribe to the Murder Police Podcast and set your player to automatically download new episodes so you get the new ones as soon as they drop. And please tell your friends. Lock it down, Judy.
We went to the funeral home and did a pre-arrangement and started paying on. So when the time
we have
comes,
his head sewn up already. We know my son was murdered at that house that day.
Warning. The podcast you're about to listen to may contain graphic descriptions of violent assaults, murder, and adult language. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Murder Police Podcast. Missing, Michael Keith Gorley.
when we pulled the truck out of the pond and Mom called to tell this person where Michael was supposedly at to let him know that the truck had been pulled out of the pond, it was like 11 o'clock that night. And he said that Michael was there and that he was kind of acting up, and he was getting on his nerves, and he was going to, what did he say? He was going to beat his ass or something like that. So it was like 11 o'clock at night. So the next day, once I have this voice telling me to find Michael, and we're trying to find him, you know, by calling and whatnot. Can't do a whole lot when you're working and everything. So it's like, okay, something's wrong. I just don't know what. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody's talked to him, and nobody's seen him. Then when Mom does get a reply back through text, like they wouldn't answer her phone calls, but they would text, the text said that he had left there around 9 o'clock walking. But she knew that at 11 o'clock at night, he was there.
There we go. That's what I picked up on too. There's a big time difference.
There's a huge time difference there. And the other thing is that Michael wasn't a walker. You know, he didn't walk anywhere.
Well, the shoes and the hat on the porch.
Yeah.
That's just weird. I mean, we
well, and not only
that,
that,
not gonna walk anywhere
from where
barefoot.
this house is, I mean, you're talking about a good 2-mile walk to get to Junction from this house. Michael wasn't a walker. He wouldn't have walked that far.
And
you know
if it
what
had
I mean?
been at that time they said Michael left walking, there's churches on that road and church people going back and forth. Somebody would have seen him.
The day that we went to look for Michael and we all met up at the house where he was supposed to be, my main goal was I wanted to look and see if there were any kind of like tracks, or if I could see any kind of like grass laid over, any indication of a direction that he could have went in. Because all the people that were there were just giving weird answers to everything, conflicting information. It was just kind of like, I don't know if these people are high. I don't know what they're talking about, but they're not making any kind of sense. So anyway, I had pulled in to the driveway. Mom got out, and she's looking up and down the ditch line because she could see tire tracks in the ditch line there. And I'm just trying to scout the fields behind the house to see if there's like any grass laid down or, I don't know. I don't know what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for Michael. And trying to get bits of information from them too to get an indication of where to go look next, because clearly he wasn't there, like he wasn't in the house. Nobody was home. I actually seen someone there that I knew, and I knew that that person knew Michael as well. So I wanted to have a conversation with that person, particularly because I'm like, I know this person and they know me and they know my brother. So I asked him, have you seen Michael? Yada, yada. He's like, yeah, I gave him a ride to the store last night. So I was getting more information about that. And I was like, well, where did you go after you took him to the store? Well, I brought him back here. Okay, well, then where did he go? Well, then he left here walking. Made no sense to me. Why would he leave here walking when he just had a ride? That didn't add up. So then as I'm standing there talking to this person, the voice that had came to me earlier that day to tell me to find Michael told me to shake this person's hand. Which I'm just like, I don't know why I need to shake this person's hand. But I was like, okay, well, I appreciate it. I put my hand in the window because this person was sitting in their car at that time, shake their hand. And when they went to shake my hand, they just looked like they had seen a ghost. I mean, like the color just went completely out of their face. Their eyes was wide open. There was a passenger in the car that had the same look going on, and they just kind of look at each other and then look back at me. And that really freaked me out because I'm like, I do not know what's going on here. I just want to find my brother. I don't know what all this is. I got this weird voice talking to me. And I'm not crazy. I'm not schizophrenic. I don't hear stuff. Like, this is the only time in my life that it's ever happened. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to get out of here. I need to go find Michael. So I'm like, okay, we need to go. It's going to get dark. Let's start driving down the road towards Junction, since they say he left walking towards Junction, so we can look out in the fields and see, is he laid out in the field somewhere? Is there grass laid down? Are there buzzards flying around? Is there anything to indicate a direction? So we leave there, we start driving down the road. And as we start driving towards Junction, this voice comes back to me and tells me to turn around. So I told Mom, I was like, I don't know why, but we need to turn around. So I turned around right in the middle of the road, went back to the house where Michael was supposed to have been at last. And there's different people in the driveway at that point that wasn't there before, which I thought was kind of odd because I'm thinking, okay, if these are Michael's friends and he's missing, they haven't left this driveway. To me, I thought, okay, they're gonna help us look for him out of concern. Never happened. So I was like, okay. Once again, Mom, it's getting dark. Let's go back towards Junction. Start going back towards Junction. The voice comes back and tells me to turn around again. Turn around again. So I turn around again. One of the people that was there that was supposedly going to beat Michael up the night before, and the text that he sent to Mom, comes riding from the opposite direction on a bicycle. Pulls up in the driveway, and Mom says, where's Michael? He's like, well, he left here walking. And she was like, okay, but when I talked to you last night at 11 o'clock, you said he was acting up and you were going to basically beat him up or whatever. Beat his ass was his words. She was like, so what happened? He was like, well, that never happened. He just left here walking towards Junction. He was like, but he left his hat and shoes here. Do you want them? And Mom, we both look at each other like, there's no way. There's no way possible Michael left here walking with no shoes on or his hat. He's not going to leave his hat or his shoes behind. Mom was like, well, if my son's shoes and hat is here, I want them. So he goes over to the porch, picks up the hat and the shoes, and comes back to the car. And when he gave him the hat and shoes to Mom, he delivered them to her. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like a military funeral where they deliver the folded flag to the spouse. It was like that. Like he was delivering this to Mom. completely weird. Like, I didn't even know what to do at that point. So I was like, all right, Mom, we got to go, because if Michael is laid out here in a field somewhere, we're not getting any information from these people to tell us where he is. This is completely weird and off. So I took Mom home to McKinney, and I drove home to my house in Parksville. Of course, when I got there, it's pitch black. And the whole way I'm driving, we're both looking on both sides of the road and trying to see if we see anything. We never did. Never seen nothing. And then when I got home that evening, it just kept eating at me like, I need to do something. I just don't know what I need to do. It's dark, and I just didn't know where to look. Nobody in the family had talked to him. You couldn't get a hold of him because he didn't have a cell phone. The people who were supposedly with him are giving us this completely weird story about what happened. So that's when I made a post on Facebook that he was missing, and that if anybody's seen him, to please get in contact with us, or to contact the trooper that we talked to that was in McKinney that day. And then after that, it just got kind of crazy, and here we are 6 years later.
So if we move past that, and so your intuition's on overload, and you've had something spoken in your ear at work to tell you, which I would never deny the possibility of that too.
We know my son was murdered at that house that day.
So if we looked at this too, we're talking about a missing person case, but as a family, you'll feel like he's been murdered then.
Oh yeah,
and I think reason brings that too, and it's a painful thing to have to deal with, but it changes how things are handled.
There's been no activity on a social security card, no activity on social media. No, I mean, they keep, what's that called? They put everything in to check to see if anything's been, what's that called? Some kind of intel.
Yeah, they've got different ways to track finances and things like that.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. Now, someone did try to open a credit card in Michael's name, but it wasn't Michael, because they sent the sheriff out there to ask him if Michael Gorley was there. They said, we don't even know Michael Gorley. So I don't know how they did that.
You can have an identity theft attempt or something, but that's interesting too.
Yeah, they said it was somebody trying to, I don't know, that's why I don't like putting birthdates on missing posters, because people can steal your identity. You just don't put a birth date on a missing poster. And Michael's birthday was on missing posters at that time, but we redid them. We deleted those and we redid them to where his birthday wasn't added.
Well, you mentioned that it got worked for a few months by that same trooper. Is that the way they handled that? Was that trooper the one that was working it, or did they assign it to an investigator, or were you aware if they did that?
We didn't get a detective on the case for 6-7 months. This sighting, oh, nope, that wasn't Michael. That sighting, oh, nope, that wasn't Michael. Oh, he's in Florida. Nope, that's not Michael. Oh, he's in Tennessee. Nope, that's not Michael. Because they're going to pull security tapes. Or they have the local law enforcement pull them and send them to them. Nope, that's not Michael. Oh, he was seen in Richmond Walmart. Somebody.
So y'all were getting tips?
No, the police were getting these tips.
I got you.
People seeing posters and calling in and say, I think I saw this guy. Because I passed them. I mean, I took almost a week to pass them all over Kentucky.
Do you still do posters?
We do. We share them on the Facebook.
On the Facebook?
Yeah.
What's the name of the organization because I want people to take a look at it, did you create the organization that I found you through?
Missing and Murdered Loved Ones in Kentucky, yes, that one, and Missing Men Nationwide in honor of Michael Gorley. Missing Men, Teens, and Boys Nationwide in honor of Michael Gorley. And then I manage Missing Women in Kentucky and surrounding states.
Do you have pretty strong followers on it? Do you have a lot of people that...
Well, not the missing men are believe it. Well, yeah, I can't believe it. The missing men are get the less views. But now, Missing Murdered Loved Ones in Kentucky, it was created 3 years ago, and it's right at 16,000 members now. When I started it, there was like 50. And then he would message me and call me, well, I think there's a sighting of Michael. I'm like, it's not going to be Michael. Give it up. My child was murdered.
6 years. And, to kind of summarize it, what we're looking at from everything you said is you've got somebody that's missing, but we've got what I'd say is a lot of workability because he just didn't vanish. We've got a place and we've got people.
Mm-hmm.
How's that affected the family since the time he's gone missing?
Nothing's the same. Well, Mom, I mean, she consumes her whole life with missing and murdered people. Like, that's what she does day in and day out. She doesn't take a break, which is good, because I can't do it. I don't know how Mom does it, honestly. Like, I couldn't spend every single day, like I have to have a break from it. But I thank God that she can do that,
I think you have to have ways to work through this. And that's probably the one that's touched it. And again, that's how I found your mom a couple of years ago, was just passing through Facebook and saw the group, and then I was paying attention to it, and that was long before we started the podcast. And one of the things I thought about in the podcast is eventually is to try to help some of these families and at least get a chance for y'all to talk about who these people are, so that we don't forget.
So who was the private investigator, and how did he get involved in the disappearance of Michael Keith Gorley and involved with his family?
That's Mike Ward. And in his own words, here's what he had to say about how he got into investigative work and specifically how he came to Kentucky. Well, Mike, I know that you're cut from law enforcement cloth because we'd met before. Tell me about your law enforcement history.
I was a police officer and investigator in Connecticut for 20 years, retired on a disability. My heart started acting up, and I was thankful enough to be included in what they call a Heart and Hypertension Act. So I was retired out. Shortly after, I moved to Kentucky to retire. Got here, had some medical issues, had some health issues, and worked through them thanks to some good doctors. Realized that there was a major problem here in Kentucky with missing persons. Kind of opened my eyes because I wasn't aware of such a problem nationwide. We didn't have as big of a problem in Connecticut. As I was working, we'd always have missing person calls, of course, like every other department. But we never had anything like this where people were missing for years and years, and there was no investigation done, and there was no closure. There was no searches. There was no investigation. They were just a form filed in a file. And that's what I found here, that they don't have the manpower here to put the time into these cases that it takes. So it kind of got me off the couch. I got my license here as a private investigator. Before I moved here, I started my own firm in Connecticut. I did that for 4 years and then decided to retire and came here. It was something I had done in the past. So I decided, well, obviously there's an issue here. Maybe this is where I need to be. Got my license, started an agency, been working ever since. We work missing person cases, surveillances, background investigations. We do just about everything that a private investigative firm will do. The name of the company is Missing Investigations and Search Services. So it's missinginvestigations.com, or we're on Facebook as well at Missing Investigations and Search Services. Before I even was licensed, what got me off the couch was a case that started out in Washington County. There was a young couple that had disappeared, and they were from Florence. Like Jen was saying, you hear a voice, somebody talks to you. Just looking at their case on television, on a news report, I just felt like these people were talking to me. And it was like, get off your butt. You know how to do this. You can go find them. I said, well, I don't know what I can do, but I'm not going to sit here. I went, contacted a family in the area. They were starting searches. So I went and contacted some family members and joined their searches and started asking questions. It was only a couple days later that state police located their vehicle and did not locate them. So the search was on to try and determine what had happened to these people. They shortly were able to learn from a witness that the couple was killed in Washington, transported out in their own vehicle, and discarded along Highway 64. So we didn't know that at the time. We just knew that they weren't where they were supposed to be. And conducting those searches and doing the investigation that I did on my own and the search crews, and we got lucky with a couple of passersby happened to locate the first person that was discarded, the male. And from there, it kind of gave us a timeline of how much time we had left for this person to be where he was. So I just started searching that area. And again, we got searches organized. We had searched one certain area. We were 50 yards away from the female's body, but we were told by the homeowner couldn't search that area because of severe ground hornets nests that were there. He said we'd get torn up. This was in August. And he said, just don't go up on that hill because you'll get eaten up. He said, when the weather gets colder, you can come back and feel free to search wherever you want to search. But the dog kept wanting to go to that hill. We said, all right, we're going to come back. And before we could get back, we got a good frost, and he started clearing that land out, and he located the female. That kind of was the fire that got under me. I said, well, if I can do it, maybe I can help. There was something about that case that ate at me. It still does. Every case I have, I've grown to pick and choose cases that I work. For some reason, I take the cases that nobody else wants.
So you're helping everybody out with Michael's case, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And how did you meet again and get involved in that one?
Oh, I forget now. It's been so long. I believe on this case it was probably my ex-partner had brought it to my attention because she had been working this case prior to me getting licensed. She was a search team coordinator, and she told me, she said, hey, you gotta pick up this case. It's right around the corner from you. You should work it. So she introduced me to Sandra, and I started working it immediately.
Now, on search team, real quick, and we may be jumping ahead. Did anybody ever do area searches out there? At some point?
We've done numerous searches. We have numerous more to do. A lot of leads that have taken us a lot of different places. But yeah, we have searches that need to get done that we've been waiting for weather and availability. And that's kind of what we're trying to coordinate right now is to get people in places that we need them to be.
Are you getting cooperation on places you need to search?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Usually if it all depends on what the lead is that's brought me there. I can generally get consent. Most of the time, homeowners, if they don't have anything to hide, they have no problem with the searching. It's basically a cursory search with a dog. I mean, we're not tearing up any property. We're not damaging anything. So just to run a dog over some property, usually people don't have too much of a problem with that. If they do, it sets off a red flag for me.
Yep, I think it would for all of us.
Why don't they want us here?
Yeah, especially in rural areas. That's a little bit different when you're out in what we might call the sticks for people that aren't from Kentucky. But rural areas, there's different expectations of privacy, and life is just a little bit different.
Yep.
That's what makes this unique. Right. Actually, this isn't something that happened in downtown Lexington or anything, or even the big metropolis of Nicholasville, where I live now. So when you're looking at this case, and again, I was throwing that out there that clearly we probably have a group of people that, without naming them, that we probably feel pretty strongly about at least have information that would resolve this. What can people in the community do to kind of help move this case forward?
Basically, anybody that knows any of these people involved, step forward, say something, call my number. My phone's on 24/7. I'll take any leads anybody's got on any case I'm working. All the information's confidential. I keep everything as anonymous as I can. And really that's what we need, is somebody to come forward and deliver us information, give us some leads, whether somebody said something, whether they saw something, whether they heard something, it doesn't matter. I'll follow it up, run it down. If it's a dead end, it's a dead end. It goes in a dead end file, If it turns out to be something, if it takes me someplace else, then I'll go there. There's between 5 and 8 people involved in this case that I know of, there's not even any doubt about, that have to have knowledge about it. Some of them have passed on. But out of those 8 people, how many people do they know? People have they spoken to over the last 6 years about this case, said something, made a comment about something, made somebody uncomfortable about something? Come on, there's people out there that know these people. And the scary thing is that they will not hesitate to do this again. This was their friend. And that's the sad part.
What it comes down to is the people that live in these areas, the people that know people, need to quit carrying this on their heart.
Right.
I don't know how people carry this on their heart, but I'm going to tell you, I met a lot of people that did. I've met people that watched people get stabbed to death with screwdrivers and rolled up in carpets and could look at it and say, that's none of my business. But at some point, the thing is that I think people don't understand is that they carry this stuff in their heart, that it inevitably, it could be them or a family member that is the next person that is missing or hurt or dead or is sitting at home wondering what happened to a loved one. They don't live in a vacuum. And in a case like this, I'm with you, Mike. People need to talk. I mean, if you're going to live in a community and be part of a community, you have to come forward on this.
Yes.
It gets to a point where it's actually shameful.
Oh, it is.
How groups of people will hold on to this information. So I think that's if we've got listeners in Lincoln and Boyle County, let's go. Lean on people. If you think you know somebody knows, you need to get in their ear and you need to talk to them and tell them to do the right thing.
Right.
Either anonymously or not, but come forward. Right. Because if you don't do that, you're going to lose your community. And trust me, I came from a community that loses daily. And that can move to any community. And it's usually because people stop acting and stop caring. So I think the big thing is that we need people cough it up. Would you agree, Jennifer?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's time.
Because there are people that I hear, I wouldn't say daily because it's been 6 years, but it's like they know, but they don't want to get involved.
Yeah, well, they got to get involved. And I'm a soapbox preacher on that. You live in a community. You don't get to not get involved. I think people are done with people not getting involved because we're sitting in a room together and you all have dealt with this for 6 years and it's not fair. And again, I think what people need to understand is that if you want to live that kind of life and if you want that to go on around you, the wheel gets tighter on who might get hit next.
Exactly.
It's just the way it is. That's how communities fall apart. And Lincoln and Boyle are too damn small to turn into some of the big city problems that we have in this state. Right. So,
and that's the problem. The community that these people are involved in is the entire community. Yeah. We have a major drug problem here that even though it's getting addressed, it's not getting addressed hard enough. And until these people get out of that life and start talking up and talking about what's going on out here, they have got to come forward. People have got to get this off their chest because it's going to eat them up. They may be the next one in line. They may be the next one that somebody gets pissed off about, and they're going to be the next one missing.
Clearly, this is a case where there's 5 to 8 people that know something about what happened with this. And by now, 6 years later, you're going to have an issue where those 5 to 8 people have spoke to other people, friends or family members, maybe a lot, maybe a little. And this is definitely something where people in this small community need to start talking and maybe talk to each other about how important it is to talk to resolve this.
Well, but keep in mind also, sometimes people don't want it resolved because that means pointing the finger at the guilty parties, which likely could have been a friend or at least someone that they all knew.
That's it. And the problem with that is that, there's so many different possibilities of what could have happened to Michael that evening. And it could have been anything from a medical emergency. It could have been maybe a drug overdose. It could have been maybe that a fight occurred and it got out of hand, which happens. But what makes it worse now is when people dig their heels in the sand and don't move and don't talk.
Well, and it's very unfortunate also because this family wants and deserves answers. Presumably, Michael is deceased at this point, but for his grieving mother and family members, for them to just be able to put their son in his final resting place would probably mean the world to her, and also just to answer questions that she has, but most importantly, to make the guilty parties pay for what they've done.
True. And a sad element of this is the family already has a tombstone erected in the cemetery for Michael, and they're prepaying the funeral arrangements as we speak. While I think they, like anybody else, want to have hope, I think that they have come to the conclusion, and if you ask them directly, they'll tell you they believe that he's deceased. And that's a sad thing for a family to have to plan.
Absolutely it is, but I think what's most disgusting to me is the code of silence that people would have, knowing that they know where he is, or knowing maybe they don't know where he is, but knowing what happened to him. And they're all in cahoots, if you will, to keep that code of silence as to let's don't tell. And I would have to think that at some point, someone's conscience is bound to be getting the best of them, imagining if that were their family wanting and seeking answers, how could you just leave them hanging?
And that makes a good point, is how people can walk with that. Because here's the reality. You can know about this, and by not saying anything, you own some of it.
You do.
And the thing is that you will carry that guilt, but not necessarily always legally if it's third-party information or the fact that you've just been told and you're not burying it. But I guess for me, I'd have to look at people and ask and say, if you go to church every Sunday, do you walk into that church with that in your heart? And for people that have family members that are involved in this, is to look over and say, are these the people that are holding your children and going to the baptisms or the christenings, or are they going to the holiday events? And you're still looking at them and you're carrying on a relationship with them, knowing that something really evil went on and it's being kept quiet.
Well, and for a town as small as Stanford, well, and for our listeners who maybe want to do research like I always love to do, for an area as small as Boyle and Lincoln County, if you look, you can see those are very tiny towns. And in these little towns where we come from and live nearby, most everyone knows everyone. So for people to be walking around knowing what happened to this young man, chances are they know his mother, his sister, his extended family members. And in little towns where such as that just has one Walmart and one grocery, you're probably running into these people. So to walk through these aisles or look over at a stoplight and see them and know that you have that little piece of information, or maybe a big piece of information, as to what happened that night and possibly where their son is laying currently or buried currently, whatever the circumstances are, how can you wake up each day and live with yourself knowing that?
Yeah, and that's true. We wonder that because you and I would probably never do that. I just know we wouldn't. But I can tell you in my career, I saw it enough that that's what makes it frightening, is that people will hold on to information. For example, I think that from what I understand from talking to Mike Ward is that I believe at least one of the people who might be central to this has passed away since then. And you have to wonder if they were involved in this or carried enough on their heart. Is the family maybe just lying to themselves if they believe that he or she has gone to a better place? Because I don't know how that works if you're a religious person and you carry something like that into the gates. I don't know if you make it in or not. And that's something to think about, the repose of somebody's soul like that. And that family probably needs to make that right if that happened.
So let me ask you, if people do know something, regardless how small or how large a piece of information is, that they feel compelled to share, how would a person go about doing that?
What I would recommend is they can call their local police department. But what I would recommend is call the Kentucky State Police. And the number would be 502-782-1800, because they're the ones that are handling it. But I will say this too, that the private investigator that we talked to, Mike Ward, is working on this case diligently. So if for some reason somebody felt like they'd rather bring it to him than the state police, is on our show notes page, I have links on how to contact Mike Ward and get that information to him. He'll process that and get that into the right hands as well. Yeah, and in closing, we're going to talk to one more person or persons. If by chance the people that were there when Michael went missing are listening to this podcast, and I'm hoping people spread it enough to where that can happen, just a word to them. In no way would I say we're not investigating the case or anything. In no way would I even hint that there's some kind of a deal or anything. But I can tell people from experience that the first ones that make it out with the information and talk about what happens and everything usually get treated a lot better. And their heart feels a lot better. So if you're listening and you're one of those people that was central to this, it's time. And it's time for you to go ahead and take care of yourself and not worry about the other people and come forward. Let's find Michael. The Murder Police podcast is hosted by Wendy and David Lyons and was created to honor the lives of crime victims so their names are never forgotten. It is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lyons. The Murder Police podcast can be found on your favorite Apple or Android podcast platform, as well as at murderpolicepodcast.com, where you will find show notes, transcripts, information about the presenters, and much, much more. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, which is closed captions for those that are hearing impaired. Just search for the Murder Police Podcast and you will find us. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for more and give us 5 stars and a written review on Apple Podcast or wherever you download your podcast from. Make sure to subscribe to the Murder Police Podcast and set your player to automatically download new episodes so you get the new ones as soon as they drop. And please tell your friends. Lock it down, Judy.